That's somebody with a picture of me in the profile. As you all know, I'm a sucker for that sort of cheap trick. And so there we go. Have I been black in all the games so far? I think I probably have. Seems a bit unfair, no? Blitz gives me more opportunities to play the old ready-tat-tat. Yeah, with knight f3, these lines are a little less dangerous for black than usual. Doesn't mean that I'm doing well, it just means that the chances of losing in the opening are a little bit smaller. Knight c3. I don't know what's the story here. I guess I could possibly go bishop g7. You constantly have to be worried about h3. Trapping that. And potentially unfortunate forcing on h5, but let's not worry for the moment. Yeah, ed6. I feel like usually you would take back with the queen. Actually castles. I don't know if my opponent realizes, but this is a very clever move. My idea was after d5 to go knight e5, and then after knight e5, bishop e5, bishop h5, gh, queen h5, I might have some counterplay on the g file, or I can at least pretend to. But now if I castle, then d5 comes, and knight e5 is no longer really an option since I've already castled and I cannot use the g file. So either I have to castle d5 then knight b8, which I guess is not completely unreasonable, or I'll have to go d5 myself. Okay, I'll play d5 myself. Hoping that the knight will be somewhat misplaced on c3 in this structure, and this will yeah, sort of justify the time that I'm losing. Now I'm expecting queen d2, quite likely. And then I think I'll have to go knight f6, trying to go knight e4. Yeah. Seems like a reasonable course of action. After bishop d3, I have a bit of a difficult choice now. I could go bishop g4, but that seems unpromising due to knight e5. Yeah, okay, so my opponent made it pretty easy for me, because h3 doesn't take into account the main threat that I had, which was to go knight e4. Now I will probably win a pawn, regardless of what happens. Yeah, I'll take on g5 now. Yeah, there is the possibility that I'm not actually winning a pawn. Let me think about this. Knight d4, knight d4, bishop d4, knight d5. And if e6, yeah, there's queen d8 followed by knight e7 and then knight c8, king f8, knight c8, bishop b2, rook b1, b7 hangs. That's unpromising. But I could go bishop d4 immediately though. Knight d4, knight d4. Because the bishop hangs on d, On e2, I think I'm winning pawn. It's just kind of move that's very easy to miss because you really usually don't want to give up that bishop. But for the price of a pretty juicy pawn, I think I'll do it. So here's a little trick as well. Yeah, now after queen d8, I'll take on e2 in between move with check, and I'll force what I thought was pretty favorable simplifications. But now I'm seeing c4. After c4, I'll have to allow cd5 as far as I can see. And the isolated pawn on d5 will mean that I won't have much advantage at all. Fortunately, my opponent went for rook d2, which is not a bad move. It's just that at the present moment, something else was required. Now after c4, I can go bishop c6. Not dc4, rook d1, losing a bishop. But I could go bishop c6, and if rook d1, then I have rook dc8. And I keep the structure intact with a clear advantage. And now I just have a safe extra pawn in the center, which I should be able to convert. Let me just grab a little extra space. I think f4 here is the best chance fighting for some dark squares. Okay, a3. I'll go a5, possibly b4 later on, trying to create a weakness on the queen side. I think especially after c4 here, I'll just go b3. I'll just go b4 and yeah. I'll try and provoke c3, I think, before I go b4. Knight e5. I'll probably just go bishop e8 for the moment. Yeah, knight d4, rook c8. It feels as though my opponent is running a bit out of plans. And yeah, b4 is an idea next, and possibly also e5 at some point. Although I am not going to weaken my structure there very lightly. b3, yeah, I think I'll jump into c3 now that I have the chance, and then go a4. Try and create a weakness that way. Rook c1 is a good move, possibly with the intention of knight c2, knight to e2 now, kicking the rook away. Okay, sacking the exchange is somewhat tempting, but I don't think that's the proper thing to do. b4, yeah, my opponent is fighting really well. I'll go g5 now. Try and fight for some of those dark squares that I mentioned earlier. I think c3 is likely to happen. Yeah, now I'll go f6, as f4 cannot be played so easily. Next, I want to go e5. Okay, he prevented that by attacking d5. But if I'll get another chance, with the knight in d4, I'm certainly going e5. And then d4, advancing the pawns and cementing the weakness on c2, which I will now immediately gobble up. d3, d2 looks like a lethal threat. d2 and then d1. Okay, very similar to the last game in the sense that my opponent played very decently, just tad too passively.